Good afternoon. Welcome to the Economic Matters Committee. Today is Wednesday, February 25th. Welcome to our 1 p.m. bill hearings. We only have, but I regret saying, I'm scared to say only, because every time I say that, it goes longer than it should. All right, so we only have 5 bills on the docket. We will begin with House Bill 730, which is Chair Corman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair. It's great to be before the New Look Economic Matters Committee. Congratulations again on your new roles. And I am with you today on House Bill 730, Franchise Reform Act. I spoke to you about this issue a bit last year. I had some complaints from constituents who were trying to deal with the franchising laws in the state of Maryland. And Maryland is one of 13 states where a franchisor needs to file an additional sort of registration that gets reviewed by the state government in addition to what they have to file at the federal level. And so we are considered sort of one of the toughest in the country for a franchisor. And a franchisor is someone who has a good concept idea, but instead of starting locations 2, 3, and 4 themselves, they sell them to independent small business owners who are able to start location 2, 3, 4. Sometimes people own multiple franchises, sometimes people own one franchise, but that's the model that this bill goes after. We passed a bill on this out of your committee and through the House last year that did some good things. Unfortunately, it ran aground in the Senate, but it did convince the Attorney General, and the part of the Attorney General office runs this program, to do a pilot program to make that registration process, or the renewal process for the registrations, work a little bit better, because unfortunately this is a thing you have to get renewed at the AG every year, and it can be very challenging. I think around 65% of the renewals come in the same 2-month period, and so that's very difficult on that office. So they created a fast-track pilot program where people get their material in earlier, then that will get a fast-track approval, because at that time of the year, the people who do this work don't have enough to do, right? And of course, they find things to do when they're doing good work for us, but they're not reviewing the registration forms because they're not in yet. So if they get them earlier, they can sort of smooth out the work a little bit. So I do want to just talk through the bill briefly. I sent a reprint over. I'm not sure it got to all of you yet, but I'm sure we will get it to you. And let me just explain what the bill does in a little bit more detail, as amended based on a lot of feedback we received from the Franchise Association, the Franchise Bar, and the Attorney General's office. I know there are still some other amendments and concerns out there, which I'm also happy to address. But the first part of the bill, which is 14-202, just adds some additional legislative intent language around franchises as a potentially useful economic development tool, not a particularly substantive piece. So happy to defer to the will of the committee on that and all other issues, of course. Further down, we have a change to the statute of limitations. This is something that the Attorney General is very interested in, to extend the length of time when someone does something wrong, that they can go after that bad actor from 3 years to 5 years. We have some other changes to statute of limitations that the franchisors and franchisees are interested in, so we're just trying to look to balance things out across both sides. We want to limit who can seek civil liability for violations of the franchise law. In particular, we want to make sure it is Maryland residents and Maryland businesses that are benefiting from our laws. We don't need a Florida franchise to sue in Maryland just because that same franchise happens to have another outpost in Maryland. It doesn't make a lot of sense. That Florida resident can make use of Florida's laws unless they're going after, of course, a Maryland franchisor. Then it does make sense for them to come into Maryland. So we want to make sure we're just using our courts for our people and our businesses. As I mentioned, there are some changes to the statute of limitations in line with things the franchisors and franchisees were interested in. It further limits a little bit when civil liability can be brought against them. And then we added a right, this is for franchisees, to join a franchise association. This is something other states have, but apparently there are some horror stories out there, hopefully not in Maryland, of groups of franchisees that were trying to form associations, and the franchisors were penalizing them for that. We don't think that's appropriate. We think people should have the right to organize together as long as they're following all applicable laws like antitrust laws. We codified the pilot that you all had triggered to be created last year, which we think is really useful. We require that a standard be created of when our AG just kicks out a defective franchise disclosure document. Unfortunately, because Maryland's AGs are so good at this, we are sometimes used for proofreading, essentially. People who have not finished putting together their material in the type of form that, would have it granted, submitted in Maryland anyway, and the Maryland AG spent all this time going through it in great detail and providing all this feedback, and that creates the guidepost for that franchisor to then update their document and resubmit it, both in Maryland and in other states. That is not a good use of Maryland resources, so we need more of a standard where they'll just kick out, forms that are, facially defective, and they can come back once they've done their homework. Then we have some reporting around the pilot program. This seems to be an issue for the AG. They think this is going to be really challenging. I think this is really important. When we set up a program here, we want to make sure it's actually working and doing the things we want it to do. So I'm not wed to any of the language in the reporting, but I do think we want to track the progress and making sure this is actually having a beneficial effect. As I said, happy to take any amendments from the committee, anything you all want to do, except if there's a severability amendment from Delegate Pippi, I would have to resist that quite forcefully. But otherwise, definitely turn it over to you, Madam Chair, and your committee's wisdom if you're interested in furthering work on this issue. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding you have two virtuals who are part of your panel.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, we'll start with them before we take questions. So we have Matthew Cagle.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Matthew Cagle with the International Franchise Association. We represent franchisors, franchisees, and suppliers in Maryland and are here to support the bill. We've had the pleasure to work with Delegate Corman and his office on this language and on this bill for quite a while, and we believe it takes a balanced, reasonable approach to Maryland's franchise registration and disclosure laws and promotes transparency, accountability, and continuous improvement on the registration and disclosure process within the state. And so, keeping my testimony short, I would just ask that this committee move the bill forward. Again, we're happy to continue to work with Delegate Corman on revising any sort of language or amendments to make sure we get this right for the state of Maryland. But again, have worked very closely with the delegate on this language and these improvements, and appreciate the committee's time and would ask for a favorable report on this bill.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next virtual. David Kahn.
Here, can you see me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
Oh, great, thank you. Yes, I am here as representative of the Maryland State Bar Association's Business Law Section. And we support the bill strongly. We've been honored to work with Delegate Corman in creating it. We do have some suggestions for amendments beyond what Delegate Corman has submitted today. On the right of free association that he mentioned, we think that is a very important part of the bill to protect franchisees who lose their a lot of their bargaining power and relationship power with franchisors after they buy the franchise. But I have a concern that the language doesn't actually create a right. It just assumes a right of association. And so I think the language should be changed to all franchisees have a right to join a trade association consisting of other franchisees of the same franchise and to participate in such an association for any lawful purpose. And then the second part would be a franchisor may not directly or indirectly inhibit or interfere with the franchisee's right of association as declared in perfect, so that there's no ambiguity on whether or not there is a right of association. As a matter of common law, there is not. There's no First Amendment in private business. And so we think an explicit declaration of such a right would help make sure it's enforceable. We also want to ask that the statute of limitations for violation of that right of association be extended to be the earlier 3 years from the violation occurs or 2 years from when the franchisee discovers the violation. That's because.
Mr. Khan, could you summarize up?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yes. And then the last important point is that the definition of a franchisee has been ambiguous in the bill or in the law for many, many years. So we have a recommendation that the definition of a franchisee be broadened to be both the franchisee entity that owns the franchise and any person who personally guarantees the entity's obligations, so that the law can be maximally.
Thank you so much, and forgive me, I did not start off the hearing with my regular spiel regarding our 2-minute timer, so that is my apologies. With that said, that is your panel, Delegate Carmen. So now we will take questions, and we'll start with Delegate Chi and then Delegate Pippi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you, Mr. Chair. I remember this bill last year, and I thought last year's bill was, if I remember correctly, was a simpler bill, correct?
I'm not sure if it's a simpler bill, Delegate Shi. It had different provisions in it. And again, that bill did not become law, but did inspire the AG to do a pilot program. It had a few different provisions, but actually there's quite a bit of overlap as well.
Okay. Could you remind us, so I believe the bill we passed out of this committee last year actually removed the annual renewal requirement, correct?
It did not. It created this fast track pilot to do the renewals kind of earlier and faster, but it did not remove the annual renewal.
Which is what AG has agreed to do on their own.
Yeah, the AG, because of your work, was convinced to do that on their own. Part of this bill would just codify that pilot for a number of years and make sure we get some reporting on it to make sure it's actually working.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Pippi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And kind of piggybacking on what Delegate Shi said, I remembered something, Mr. Chairman, good about the bill from last year, and I thought it was something with fees. Was there like a fee removal?
Yep.
Okay.
So I don't.
No, that was it. And I just, because is that still there, or is that?
Yeah, so the idea we had last year to try to incent people to go into the pilot program was to waive the fee.
Okay.
And you and I were going to have a beautiful moment on the House floor together where we both got to, vote for a fee decrease,
Yeah.
despite my the nickname you all give my committee. But the actual industry asked us not to do that. They asked us to remove that because they think the fee is important to fund the office that reviews the materials. So that ended up not in the bill last year and is not in the bill this year.
Well, we do take amendments, so, keep it in mind.
It's in your
Thank
hands,
you,
Delegate.
Mr. Chair, appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Seeing no further questions, thank you, Chair Corman.
Thank you again.
We also have another favorable virtual with Jessica Roth.
No, I don't know who she is.
So our virtual Jessica Roth is in, but not responding, so we will have to move on. So with
Sorry,
that said, that was.
it was very, there's no explanation. I just beamed in out of nowhere and had no idea what was going on, so sorry.
Okay, thank you. So Ms. Roth, you're with us. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Roth. I am with Gaia, which is the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives. And I'm here to testify in support of this bill. It is critically important that we have as much protection against chemical recycling in the country as possible. The many companies and professional associations like the American...
Ms. Roth,
Yes?
are you testifying on HB 730 Maryland franchise registration legislation?
No?
Okay, well then, all right, then I'm not sure why you're on here, but okay, so this is not the correct
Yeah.
bill hearing
Okay.
for this. Thank you kindly.
So do we just wait in the waiting room until we're put on the testimony spot?
Yes, correct. All right, thank you. Well, that was bizarre.
I'm not trying to sneak anything by you, Madam Chair. This bill has nothing to do with chemical recycling.
It threw me off. I was like, what? I was like, okay. All right, so with that said, we have no other witnesses present or virtual. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 730. Thank you, Chair Corriman. We now move on to House Bill 1026. Delegate Queen.
Thought we were going to be last, but I'm glad we're here. We're going last. I know. So I just told him, I'll take it. Okay, are we ready? Good afternoon, Chair Valderrama, Vice Chair Charkoudian, and my colleagues from Economic Matters Committee. This is really a simple bill, which is a needed bill. So HB 1026 is outlining a consistent method for merchants to round up or round down cash transactions, okay? So why do we need this bill? Well, on November the 12th, 2025, the last penny was minted by our federal government. And so rest in peace, pennies. But that has left a problem for our merchants because a lot of the pennies aren't at the stores when people are trying to give cash. They're in our piggy banks at home. They're in wishing wells. They're, some of them in garbage dumps. So we don't have them to provide cash when you're making transactions using cash at a store. And so what this bill does, it looks at a model bill that the NCSL, National Conference of State Legislators, put into place so that there would be some consistency in how we would round bills, round transactions dealing with cash. So some of the clarifying parts that the bill deals with, it does make sure this is only pertaining to cash transactions. It's not going to change any of your state taxes and how you apply the taxes. That will be done before that last transaction when we are looking at whether or not change is being given out. And it doesn't change any of your refund policy. If your store says that your refunds are only given by credit or a store credit, that will stay the same. And if it is cash refunds, then you will follow this process. So the way the bill is outlined, the rounding happens, and it's a little graphic that I kind of provided you with. So if your transaction was, for example, $10.01 or $10.02, then you just pay $10. Okay? If your transaction was $10.06 or $10.07, then you pay $10.05. So that's on the consumer side. For the merchant side, if it's, well, both of them are on the side, but this is who gets to round down and who gets to round up. If the bill is $10.03 or $10.04, then you would pay $10.05. If the transaction is $10.08 or $10.09, then you would pay $10.10. So this is to be consistent. I don't know if you've gone to stores yet, but you will see signs up saying, use exact cash, and there are different approaches that merchants are using. So this is just so that we can have a consistent approach, and it's in line with a bipartisan bill that is the model legislation from NCSL. So with that, we're going to add some clarifying language so that it does make sure people know it's to the last transaction. It's going to make sure if there's any sales tax is done first. all of that, and reading that, some people had questions, so we want to clarify that. But all in all, this is a needed bill, and hopefully we can pass that from this committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and honorable members of the committee. For the record, Kaylee Locklear here on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Alliance. We are here in strong support of this legislation. And you already heard, but as penny circulation declines and supply shortages of pennies increase, retailers face practical challenges making exact change. Without statutory guidance, businesses must adopt inconsistent rounding practices, which creates confusion and potential legal risk. I do just want to let you all know we have heard almost on a daily basis from retailers around the state for clarification on this. We tried to work with numerous regulatory entities since October, but could not get any sort of guidance around this. So that's why Maryland is not the only state where you see them codifying language around rounding up and rounding down. And I think what's important, and Delegate Queen hit on this, but the language that we're using is bipartisan language from the National Conference of State Legislatures. It's symmetrical rounding. You heard how that's going to work. Whether the ability to round down or round up. I know some entities would prefer that we round down all the time, but for heavy cash transaction-oriented businesses, that results in massive, massive losses. I do want to touch on the amendments really quickly because we're working on drafting them right now, but they will fix the definition of total price that ensures rounding does not alter tax or fee calculations. It will clarify that rounding applies only to the final cash settlement, so that protects your tax base and ensures ease of implementation. And one thing we did not put in the bill that we realized we need in it is a mixed tender rule to make it perfectly clear that it will only be applicable to the cash portion that is being used for payment. So I'll stop there. We urge a favorable report. Glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll start with Delegate Ahrens and then Delegate Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you consider this a pro-business bill or a pro-customer bill?
It's both. It's fair.
Okay. My only question I would have is that as we look at this stuff, if I get to the higher end, I can actually fix my price that it'll always be 9 cents, 8 cents or 9 cents, or 3 cents or 4 cents. Do you think something like that would go on? I know a penny doesn't necessarily matter to a lot of people, except if I had a penny for every amendment we tried on the House floor and lost, I'd be a wealthy man today.
I would point you maybe to the country of Canada, who actually went through similar changes with regard to their version of the penny. And I would like you to know that there were studies that were done there, and it showed that the effects were statistically neutral. So in fact, we don't see retailers trying to take advantage of consumers or something like that.
Okay, just a couple questions. Thank you.
Delegate Adams.
Thank you. And sponsor the bill, I know that we're talking about small sums of money, but is there anything in here that that might be, okay, you're not doing it according to the law, and therefore there's a penalty provision? Because I'm not seeing a penalty provision here.
No.
Okay. And so in the bill on page 3, lines 4, it says, notwithstanding any other provision of law, a merchant doing business in the state may, and it goes through that those multiple examples that you were sharing, and I'm just simply saying that the may means that if the business makes a mistake and instead of rounding up, they should have rounded down, for example. It doesn't appear that there's anything in this bill that would come back and haunt a merchant.
There's not.
No, we hope that they're going to operate in, good faith.
Delegate Pippy.
Thank you. I'd like to offer my 2 cents
Thank you.
on this bill.
We need it.
No, so my question is there any requirements that a merchant would have where they can't on their own adjust the amount that's due? Like, so for example, you know what the sales tax is, right? So in Maryland, so you could adjust products that you have hypothetically to make it to where it's not a number that would need change. Well, no, because then,
Right.
I see, because they're paying with a certain amount, you got to give them change. So I guess that's really not my question. My question is there something like in payroll where an employer would be in violation of the law by making a change to give out certain amounts? That's more what I'm concerned.
Looking
Like,
at
is
payroll?
that, is there something like prohibits them from just doing this automatically, saying, well, I'm gonna give you a couple cents less because they don't make the payment, but if I do that, I'm in violation of a law. Can you help me with that?
Go ahead.
Okay.
And this is an interesting point you're bringing up, because in the model legislation that we provided, we actually did not address wages at all.
Yeah.
So Delegate Pippy, on page 3, starting on line 27, this bill actually does go into cash payment of wages. Our industry is not impacted by this. I know NFIB and the chamber did flag this, and we want to have this conversation because I'm not sure that we want to get into this. But if you recall, you all did pass the Pay Stub Transparency Act in this state. So whatever it is that you would be rounding based on cash has to be disclosed very clearly to the individual who's receiving that wage payment. But I don't know if you all want to get into this. This was not our language that was added to the bill, and we caught this at the last minute, so.
Yes, so regarding payroll, as I mentioned, the NCSL model legislation didn't talk to that.
But this bill has it in there.
Right.
Oh, okay.
But we didn't intend for it to be in there, so
Oh, so you think that might come out?
I was planning to take it out.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah, I was
so-
just really curious to see if there was like something that would prohibit, like the merchant would run afoul by making the adjustment on their own without the bill. Does that make sense? Like where they couldn't just change it, pay someone a couple cents less or a couple cents more, and somehow they violated some sort of reporting rule or
Yeah.
does that make sense?
It
That's what I'd be
addresses
concerned with.
that. The language is the employer pays using cash consistent with the subtitles. So the rules that are applicable to transactions for rounding up or rounding down also would have to be applicable for cash payments of wages.
Okay, okay.
And the idea is that with the Payroll Transparency Act, they would see that, the employee would see whatever was to make the changes, if that happened.
Gotcha, okay, thank you.
Does that satisfy your concerns?
Well, no, I mean, I don't,
Because like I said, I was planning to take it out, so you want us to keep it in for clarity, or what would you?
well, only if it puts the merchant in a bind. Like, so the issue we're trying to address is the fact that there's way less pennies in circulation, right? So merchants are having to deal with this issue. And so my question, maybe to help you, would be that if a merchant doesn't have is paying people in cash, but recording it, and doesn't have the proper amount to give, and they make the adjustment anyways, have they run afoul of some law? So in that case, maybe the bill is more important in that scenario to give them permission to do that. But again, I don't know if that's what you're trying to address here, so.
Okay, let's think about it.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
See no further questions. Thank you, Delegate Queen. All right, and your panel. We have one more favorable. Michael Halloran, you're not Mr. No today. What?
Only for Delegate Quinn. Nobody else.
Wait a minute. You're new to law.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Mike O'Halloran. I'm here today representing the Mid-Atlantic Petroleum Distributors Association, which, as some of you probably know, members include our state's convenience store owners and operators. You have my written testimony in front of you. The only thing I'd add to the conversation, and forgive me if the sponsor did mention this, but earlier so the U.S. Mint ceased manufacturing the penny back in November of last year. Shortly thereafterwards, the U.S. Treasury came out with what it referred to as non-binding guidance. That was actually in December of 2025 on how retailers can handle the issues that will arise. However, if you read the Treasury Department's guidance, I believe right there at the very top, it says that it is non-binding. So in that vein, I think the Treasury, at least right now, is taking the position of deferring to states. And I'd also like to emphasize, the experience in Canada with some of the issues, is it pro-business, is it pro-customer? I think the fact that this bill is bipartisan, it's from NCSL, I think should hopefully speak to the fact that this can be a win-win. So with that, certainly welcome any questions, but we do urge a favorable report on House Bill 1026. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 1026. We'll now move on to House Bill 892, Delegate Hill. And members, we have colleagues from the Health Committee. We have Delegate Kaufman, Delegate Ross, and Delegate Taveras, who's here with us as secondary for Delegate Hill's two bills.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair. It's a pleasure to be here before you two and the other members of the committee. For the record, my name is Terry Hill, and I'm here to present House Bill 892. Okay, House Bill 892 is a simple cemetery bill that addresses regulatory issues with the transfer of cemeteries for alternative use and sale. I'm actually just becoming familiar with some of the testimony, and rather than read all of my testimony to you, I just want to draw your attention as I start out to information that was given and offered by Ms. Yvonne Fisher, who is not writing you in her official capacity as a member of the Cemetery Legislative Advocates, but has that background. And the point that she makes is that purchasing an existing cemetery with if you purchase a cemetery that are large, have a large amount of land that appears to be unused, the land will require it to have an ecologic, ground penetrating, and other types of surveys to assure there are no burials there. She points out that there are a great deal of opportunities to exploit these and that regulations are needed, and that there should be requirements that the current owners or purchasers must inform every family member of the loved ones that are interned at the cemetery for all proposed sales or transfers of ownership. What this bill does is it expands who may bring a court action when a cemetery is proposed to be sold. It places the burden of proof on the property owner. It requests that the court hear from interested parties and then decide whether to allow or permit the sale to go forward. It provides a clear judicial options and authorizes the court to prevent inappropriate sales or transfers. And it also brings Baltimore City under these rules. By establishing sort of a clear, structured legal process, it helps to ensure that cemetery sales actually respect the seriousness and the sanctity of the ground and what their purposes are. I am proposing an amendment to remove the definition of cemeteries that includes, quote, a structure used to conduct business related to the operation of a cemetery, because that is a problematic definition. The Senate has passed amendments which essentially take the bill back to what it was last year, but they address what I think are some significant concerns by housing advocates. And that Senate bill, I believe, is in your committee as well. And the state highways are concerned that the Senate amendments, however, reverse some of the work that they did from last year's bill to bring it into a piece that they could support. So I guess what I'm saying is you've got my bill and the Senate bill, and I'm very willing to continue to work with both the advocates and the opponents who raise some clear issues to try and come up with legislation that will both ensure that the goals of this legislation are met, but do not prove so overly burdensome that they prevent appropriate sales or disrupt appropriate reuse of these large properties. I also would object, however, to the Senate amendment that removes religiously owned properties from this legislation, because as we all know, they're a significant part of it, and if you're selling it for some other use, I don't think the religious or the separation between state and religions necessarily applies. It applies when they're in management and ownership of it, but I think that there's a larger issue and interest at stake. So with that, I'm going to let the panelists present, if that's okay, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, my name is Christine Simmons. Although there are many examples of cemeteries having been sold for other purposes, the Catholic Church is the most blatant abuser. They consider cemeteries sacred places to be preserved. However, there are multiple examples in Baltimore especially of graves having been moved to other cemeteries. St. Vincent de Paul Cemetery in Clifton Park was sold to become a public golf course. Some of those headstones were dumped in Herring Creek. I've seen them. St. Patrick's Cemetery number 1 was sold to the city to build Harford Heights School. Laurel Hill Cemetery in Baltimore is another example. Once thousands of prominent African-American burials were located there. Only a few hundred were moved to another cemetery when it was sold. The rest are under a strip parking lot. Destruction of cemeteries is not just a problem of the past. We're still seeing buildings constructed over known burial grounds and human remains removed without notice. Today, there is a hearing in Howard County about rezoning an existing cemetery to build a car wash and convenience store. That's going on right now. So this is something that hasn't just happened in the past. Families have already had loved ones removed from that cemetery without notice. They haven't been contacted. They don't know how to contact the developer. With the right legal framework, we can protect these sacred places. I urge you to support this bill, bringing clarity and firmness to the treatment of Maryland cemeteries and the families connected with them. Thank you. Go ahead.
Ma'am, could you tell us your name because we don't have you signed up?
Okay. My name is Eileen McGuckian, and I'm authorized to speak for 2 Maryland nonprofits that support the bills.
Could you tell me what those nonprofits are?
The coalition and both turned in written testimony, but this is the oral. The Coalition to Protect Maryland Burial Sites is one.
I see. Okay, so you're testifying on behalf of written testimony for people who aren't here. Okay, so, but just for process sake, you can speak. It's just that we need oral witnesses to actually sign up.
I know that. I realized that after I had pushed the button, and it was after 5 o'clock.
Okay, thank you kindly.
Thank you. So I'm authorized to speak for these 2 groups. The Coalition to Protect Maryland Burial Sites formed in 1992 in response to desecration of a Howard County cemetery. And the group has come here almost every year since to propose improvements in Maryland law. Montgomery Preservation led creation of a county burial sites inventory and 2 local protection laws. Now more support is needed in state law. For more than 30 years, we have drawn the General Assembly's attention to cemeteries that fall between the cracks, mostly because they have no identified official chain of title. Abandoned and neglected burial sites can be found in every county of Maryland. This follows from European and African families having buried loved ones here for 350 years. I hope you've had a chance to read the 2022 report to the Joint Chairman to appreciate how prevalent this problem is. Every month in newspapers and online, you'll hear and read the shocking description of a neglected, abandoned, vandalized graveyard. Often it's a researcher who is finding mention in a deed of an ancient deed of a half an acre reserved for slave burials, or a descendant looking for a family member killed in a Civil War skirmish, or it's the edge of a parking lot or the ruins of an old church that yields a pile of discarded gravestones. Both of these bills address our public responsibility to help abandoned and unwanted cemeteries, but I prefer to keep the 2 bills separate. Both will have a beneficial effect on all Maryland cemeteries. 892 describes what should happen when these cemeteries are sold, transferred, or the property for another use. It provides a much-needed voice to descendants and others who respect those who came before us. And I thank you for considering this.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll start with Delegate Adams.
Thank you, Chair. And I don't want to spend a lot of time. I can certainly do this offline. Are you saying that there's no deed restrictions that prohibit the sale of or use of a burial ground, and that, or that you go so far back in time that title searches don't reveal the obligations under the land use?
Many times, these aren't even included in the deeds.
I'm not sure I understand. So a property, all property has deeds, right? And when you're changing title company would have to go and do a title search. They'd have to research the history of the property before it could transfer. And I'm missing the essential part that allows this to even happen.
Okay. All properties that have cemeteries on them do not always include the cemeteries in the deeds when transferred to the next generation.
So what you're saying is that there was a time, or even more recently, perhaps, people are using land for burial sites, but they're not deed restricting the properties to prohibit this sort of possible action or reuse of the land.
No, they fall under regular zoning laws for each county. They're not residential, they're not usually commercial, but they could be commercial. It's a complete, variation.
Okay, and I don't mean to prod, like I'm sure this is a good reason why this bill's here, and some of this I would be offended by if it was happening, just on the face of this situation. But you're saying that the Catholic Church is a organization that will customarily take property that is within the Catholic Church and then reuse it? Or is that your testimony? Is that
Use it for other purposes.
And so you're saying the Catholic Church doesn't have
They've sold it in some cases to the city of Baltimore, in other cases to private developers.
But the reason why they could do that is because the deed is not restricting its use. There are other churches that have, with land that's attached to the church, forever or perpetual exclusions. Anything.
We're not seeing many examples of those other religious groups having done the same thing, though.
All right. So I'll take the rest of it offline, and maybe there's some further testimony, but thank you for.
Just as a background, a lot of times developers listed different plots of land to be developed and left a blank space where there was an existing cemetery, or they left it and it only says reserved. It doesn't say reserved for what.
Okay, Delegate Ross?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like this bill, and thank you, Dr. Delegate Hill, for bringing this. Two questions, though. Does this bill define the persons of interest? Because I'd ask this because I know we talked about families, but sometimes the families have moved away and they don't even know, they don't have an interest in it anymore, but it's the community. As an HOA president for a long time, I have members who are very concerned about the businesses and the land surrounding the community because it affects their property values and all of it. Can they bring a court action under this bill?
Yes.
I can't remember the exact citation in the code, but there is a definition of persons of interest in a bill that was passed, or a series of bills that were passed years ago, talking about who would have access to these cemeteries. And persons of interest were defined in there. They're descendants, they might be neighbors, they might be people who want to do the right thing by the cemetery, preservationists. The persons of interest is
We are
defined.
looking at it. We don't, I don't see right off that it says community members. but
Well,
I guess
on section 5-505, person of interest has the meaning stated in Real Property Article 14-121. It then goes on to say, an action under paragraph 1 may be brought by a person with a burial right in the cemetery, a descendant community organization, a nonprofit organization that has a purpose of preserving the cemetery, a government unit with a financial, regulatory, or other interest in the property, or a person of interest.
Descendant community organization seems to include them. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then my second question, just wondering for the property owners, do you know how much time it could add to a sale if somebody is ready to sell today or they're ready to transfer? Do we have any idea? I'm sure you didn't do like a time study of that, but any even anecdotal sense of once somebody says we want to sell it, or we want to transfer it or use it in some other way, do we know how much time the court process would add to their sale?
I think in the opposition testimony, there's some indication that it can be quite lengthy. And my understanding is that may be the primary reason that the Senate took on the amendments that they took on, some of which, as I stated, we have issue with. And it certainly is not my goal, and I don't think it's the advocate's goal, to create lengthy, costly processes. We just want to make sure that there is a process that makes sense in terms of who has a right to speak, and that they're not predetermined to favor the seller, that they're actually fair processes, and that the actual interests that should be addressed are addressed.
Okay.
And that's why we're open to those discussions.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Delegate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Adams?
Thank you for the second bite of the apple. So I feel like I need to ask the question on the bill. I didn't do that before. What is this bill actually doing? Are you taking a deed, and now if we pass the bill, we're providing that interested parties can actually apply deed restrictions on land that doesn't currently have it? Is that what this bill is doing?
No, it does not. It does not do that. This isn't changing ownership. This is providing a process for if the current owner wants to transfer, sell, get rid of a cemetery.
But the bill's trying to prohibit the sale of the property or the use.
It's not trying to prohibit anything.
No, not at all.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No, it's trying to provide a process if the owner wants to do that.
Oh, I see. Okay, so in other words, this is not applying deed restrictions. What it's doing is it's saying before you do it, you have to go through the folks that would be affected.
It's a process.
That's the interested party part. Okay, now I got it.
Got it. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for your testimony, and Delegate Hill for your panel. We have some virtual favorables. We'll start with Josh Silver.
Hello, can you hear me? My video's not on.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Josh Silver. I am a member of the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition. In my community, a parking lot was paved over an African-American cemetery called the Moses African Cemetery. At least 200 bodies are buried beneath that parking lot. This must never, ever happen again in Maryland. The Moses African Cemetery, located in Bethesda, Maryland, is a cemetery that was in use before and after the Civil War. In the first half of the 20th century, the African-American community was displaced by KKK violence and discrimination. Developers eventually acquired land, including Moses Cemetery, and desecrated it by building apartments and light industry on top of the cemetery. HB 892 would provide descendant communities with a right to bring a case to court if they oppose the sale of a cemetery. A court would be required to render a decision by either allowing the sale or transferring the cemetery to a descendant community. Providing a right to go to court has been essential for the success of the Fair Housing Act and other federal civil rights laws. In the case of Moses Cemetery, BACC has had to fight for years in court to get the court to hear the case. HB 892 would have expedited this process by mandating that the courts render a decision. Unfortunately, the Senate Finance Committee's amended version of this bill would continue exposing cemeteries to desecration. The amended version would make it difficult in the case of non-religious cemeteries and impossible in the case of religious cemeteries for descendant communities to go to court if an owner of a cemetery is proposing a sale or use that would not protect buried ancestors. Maryland lawmakers are upset that graves of African-American boys of a reform school in Prince George's County have been neglected for decades. Lawmakers are now scrambling to fund preservation of the site. One more sentence. If lawmakers want to offer grants, wouldn't they also be interested in providing the right to go to court that could prevent desecration in the first place? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Silver. I'm going to take questions now so that our staff, it's more convenient when we're switching between virtuals. I'll start with Delegate Ahrens.
Just probably for the sponsor, you might have covered, I don't think you did. Does this become, the sale of the cemetery, does it become a material fact with the property?
A material fact, I'm not sure what that legal
Well, when I
term
buy a
is.
home, there's like material defect. if you will. I have to disclose certain things about a property, and I'm wondering if you have to disclose if you're going to build
Under
homes
current
on-
law, yes.
I'm sorry?
Under current law, you do,
So you
bill
would have
doesn't
to
change that.
disclose this, well, to the potential buyer, the builder, let's say, does that builder have to disclose it to, let's say, me as a home buyer?
Correct. Yes.
Is that
they
right?
do. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no other questions? You didn't have one for the gentleman, did you? I'm sorry? A question, you didn't have one for the virtual, okay. So we'll move on to the next virtual, Eleanor Thompson.
I'm here. Good afternoon. My name is Eleanor Thompson, and I'm here to strongly express support for House Bill 892 and 893. Legislation concerning the protection of the abandoned and neglected cemeteries and their transfers to the descendant communities. As a visionary founder of the Ancestral Remains Project and a former Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture who served 8 years and was one of Anne Arundel County commissioners, I've worked with Maryland Historical Trust and various different organizations to help to protect some of these cemeteries. I have seen firsthand the critical importance of preserving these sacred spaces. Since the age of 6, I have been active in preserving and documenting cemeteries through my own genealogy methodology. My advocacy is deeply personally rooted in the stories of my late mother, my grandmother, my grandfather, my aunt, my husband, and my dear friend, Miss Terry V. Sorrell. Terry and I reconnected decades ago. Our high school days on the Eastern Shore, while battling cancer, her greatest wish was to obtain and maintain the property in Queen Anne's County where her family is laid to rest, including her ancestor, London Gould, a conductor on the Underground Railroad. In a powerful twist of history, we discovered that London Gould served over 8 years in Maryland Penitentiary to help my own ancestor, Harriet Turner, to escape from slavery. Terry worked tirelessly to organize a nonprofit organization to protect this cemetery, but she sadly passed away on January 3rd, 2026. The fate of her ancestral resting place now remains uncertain. That piece of property is ready to be sold. If Terry were here today, she would undoubtedly be a vocal advocate for these bills. I urge you to support House Bill 892 and 893 to ensure that the descendant communities have the right to care for their ancestors and that history like that of Terry and London Gould, my mother and father, will never be erased because today it's me, tomorrow it could be you. I thank you and I hope you support these bills. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony and your passion, Ms. Thompson. Thank you. I don't see any questions from my colleagues. Thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. Thompson. Thank you very much, Delegate Hill. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 892. We'll now move on to your next counterpart bill, 893.
893, okay. Twin bills. 893 tries to address some of the issues with abandoned cemeteries. And I just want to point out that we all know about, the existence of the Office of Cemetery Oversight. But the one thing the Office of Cemetery Oversight does not have oversight over are abandoned cemeteries. They also have no oversight over private family burial plots and historic cemeteries and some religious church-owned cemeteries as well. And I'm sure I'm not alone in being someone who has represented communities where there are cemeteries that are not being maintained, where fences are overgrown and falling down, and where neighbors are complaining that what's going to be done. And your offices will reach out to who you think the owner is, if you can find the owner. But either if it was a church cemetery, the church has gone away. There's no legacy individual or organization responsible for it. So what this bill does is, again, sort of set up a process for the intent to transfer an abandoned property to someone or an agency or a government entity that will be responsible for making sure that that property is maintained, or that it is that those who are interned there are properly transferred to another appropriate place. But someone has to take responsibility, and that's essentially what this bill does. Go ahead.
Were either of you women going to testify?
Yes.
Okay.
Chair, members of the committee, my name is Christine Simmons. This bill streamlines the process, allowing a cemetery with no known owner to be granted ownership by a jurisdiction, typically the county, to create a clear title and enable that cemetery to then be transferred to a descendant or a preservation group for its preservation. Maryland has hundreds of cemeteries that have effectively become orphaned. When ownership is unknown, these cemeteries, many of which are small family cemeteries, fall into neglect. Developers sometimes list parcels unlabeled or as reserved. Assessment records, if they even exist, may list long-deceased individuals as the owner. Sometimes no one knows who can give permission to access or maintain the site. I've researched over 600 cemeteries in Anne Arundel County. Of those, over 40 have no known ownership. Often it takes quite a bit of research to determine if ownership is even known. I personally know 3 people trying to obtain ownership of family cemeteries. They have had a long, expensive, and frustrating process trying to do so. I support this legislation to create a clear pathway to ownership and give counties a way to identify responsible parties. Every cemetery has a story, and Maryland has a rich history. I look forward to any questions.
Hello again. Eileen McGuckian speaking for the Coalition and Montgomery Preservation. I'm going to echo a lot of what Tina said. This is 893 provides a reasonable path for jurisdictions to resolve these ownership problems, should they decide to take advantage of it. This is an enabling bill. It is not a requirement for a jurisdiction to do this. And it targets properties with no owner identified in ESTAT, on deeds or records, without any line to the descendants. These cemeteries will continue to be dumping grounds, eyesores, overgrown slices of land containing pieces of headstones and unmarked graves, ignored or mistreated. We're looking for a way to substitute for the families and the congregations and the documents that are not there. Historically, many of these have been dismissed. These cemeteries have been dismissed as unimportant and intentionally mistreated. African American cemeteries are sadly overrepresented in these instances. Without proven recorded ownership, it's impossible to take steps to resolve the problems or even to organize a cleanup, to be officially recognized, to even apply for a grant to help. Again, this is an enabling bill, not requirement. If the state prefers not to be involved, then at least allow counties and towns to have this option if they wish to. Each county and municipality can figure out the process for itself, and a few already have. Chesterfield Cemetery in Centerville and Old Berlin Cemetery in Brunswick are both community-owned, town-owned. The object is the same: save these forgotten little sites in the woods, on the edge of roads, in the middle of farmland, by allowing Marylanders who do care about these sacred places to act with help from descendants, neighbors, HOAs, scout troops, friend groups. I urge you to separate the bills and to approve both. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with Delegate Howard and then Delegate Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So both bills talk about 892 has some, I know we're on 893, but 892 has some definitions as far as the following persons, organizations, government units have standing to bring a court action. Why not veterans?
I have no objection to including veterans, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Adams?
Okay, and again, I'm just probing because I'm unfamiliar with the nature of this. I mean, title and land go together hand in hand. I'm not familiar with the exercise of not being able to show clear title. So I know it's happening because you're here, but anyway, I asked the question under that context. It says here that under current law, there's a 4-year time period. Is the goal of the bill to expedite these proceedings?
Yes.
Okay, and why are we expediting the proceedings? What's the purpose?
Because they're abandoned and they're neglected, they're orphaned, and they're overgrown, and no one seems to have the authority to manage them or keep them. And in some cases, you know, it's not just the neighbors who are asking, why is this allowed to go on? The zoning says, well, there's nothing we can do. Okay. But it's also, some family members will come back and it's like, well, you know, this is not as it should be. So no one has the authority to maintain them.
Okay, so I asked my next question, just remind you how I started this. It's probing, it's not necessarily deciding. Are you concerned that a proper title search won't happen if this bill passes because this will be the expedited way that we handle these moving forward?
No, but you could go ahead, no.
A title search still will need to happen. A lot of times, a title abstractor is needed versus a simple title search as well.
Yes. But you're not worried that if the bill passes, that those exercises won't be bypassed because they're no
They'll still
longer
have to go on.
necessary? They say, okay.
And we'll have a sense of who's responsible for them and who's going to pay for that.
So after a exhaustive sort of back research to this, it's then and only then does this bill then apply to allow for the expedited sort of condemnation proceedings that you want to?
I think that's accurate. I mean, you have to establish that it's been abandoned, right? So you have to, you've gone through the process of determining who the owner is and who's responsible, and the answer comes up, nobody.
Thank you. Thank you, sponsor.
We'll go with Delegate Tavares and then Delegate Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question around the bill is, like, obviously this is a very important bill for us, and I think it's a Black Caucus priority, if I'm not.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's
I'm not, okay. But I will suspect. But my only concern with regards to the, to this, how do we assure that on page 3, on anyone, on lines 19 to 22, that any descendant organization or nonprofit organization that acquires the property and maintains it and preserves it is doing so in an honorably fashion? Like, how do we assure that is happening?
So one of the things that happens, and they'll correct me if I'm wrong, is that at the point that there's ownership, it does fall under oversight, the Commission on Cemetery Oversight, because it's no longer abandoned. So they have some authority.
All right.
And it could very well fall under any jurisdiction's minimum property maintenance.
And there's zoning.
And it should.
Yeah, code enforcement and those kinds of things that happen.
Yeah, that's the real reason that I was trying to highlight. Thank you.
Delegate Kaufman?
Yes, I have, if it's okay, Madam Chair, I have 2 questions. I am a proud co-sponsor of this legislation, but I do have, and I hope it passes, but I do have some questions. I'm just wondering, how prevalent is this issue? Are we talking about hundreds of abandoned cemeteries a year, 50? And also, what constitutes an abandoned cemetery? Is it a year of neglect and unmowed grass, or 2 years, or 6 months, or?
There is no standard definition for abandoned cemeteries as far as a time element. We checked various counties and we checked various states across the country, and definitions are all over the place.
And how about the prevalence of?
Prevalence, I can only speak for Anne Arundel County. I research cemeteries in other areas, but I'm most familiar with Anne Arundel County. There are over 40 just here in this county.
Wow. Thank you, Madam Chair, and great bill, Delegate Hill.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further questions, so we'll move. We have another favorable. She can join you on the panel. Katie Myers. Is there Katie Myers here? Okay, no Katie Myers. So we will now move on to our virtual favorable, David Zinner. Okay, no Mr. Zinner. Is Eleanor Thompson, are you here? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
You have 2 minutes.
Okay. Again, my name is Eleanor Thompson. I am the founding member of the Broadneck African American Heritage Project, which is a nonprofit organization. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about my background. My grandfather, Father Noah Gaines, born in 1812, was born on the eastern shore of Maryland, died in Baltimore County. For many years, I was researching to see where his burial place was at, and it was located at Laurel Defunct Cemetery. That cemetery is now known across the state of Maryland and beyond. It was lying under Mondawmin Mall. I have also preserved some history, important history of Mount Zion Cemetery in Lansdowne, Maryland. That cemetery was abandoned by, I'm going to say, the church. I have preserved and got some of those records into the Maryland State
Ms. Thompson,
Archives.
can you
Yes.
show yourself?
Okay.
I need you to be on the record. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I have gotten a lot of those records preserved and saved from being destroyed from the house that it was in to the Maryland State Archives, so the descendants of that burial ground could know where their family was laid to rest. It is important that these bills be passed, so the future generations will know exactly where they came from, who they came from, and the important history that they played in the United States and the state of Maryland. If we don't pass some of these bills, our future generations won't know about the greatness that we came from. I'm in support of these bills. Thank you.
Thank you. For those.
Do I have more time to talk? I can talk about it.
Just wait for my microphone. Okay.
It's important for these bills to be
No,
passed.
we appreciate your passionate testimony. Thank you. We're having technological issues again.
That's the ancestors. From the descendant community. They're watching. They're really watching.
Move favorable.
Okay, so it's, for those who are watching, the next delegate is not Delegate Wyville, but she is sitting in Delegate Wyville's seat. So Delegate Riley has a question.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I guess this question is actually for Delegate Hill. I'm sure you can probably answer this. So I'm not sure if you're aware of the I believe it's the one opposition from the Maryland Catholic Conference. And basically, I think their concern is that they think that this would be a risk of sweeping in the religious cemeteries that are active in the spiritual and pastoral sense. Do you want to address that, or have you seen that?
Thank you, Delegate Riley. I have not. I understood a little bit more their opposition to the previous bill. In this case, we're talking about abandoned. Now, Mount Zion and Lansdowne is the cemetery I was actually referencing. I used to, for the first 8 years of my time here in Annapolis, I represented that community. And my office, over several years, worked really hard to get an answer to our constituents who were saying, what's going on here? So the fact that it's got a religious title to it, or that it was once owned by a religious institution, I don't think is really relevant when it's abandoned. I have a family cemetery in Hurlock, Maryland, owned by a Methodist church. And every year I get, a little card saying, can you give $50 to help support this. And we continue to do that. But at some point, something's going to happen. Maybe the churches get smaller and smaller. I'm not sure how much longer they're going to be able to support that cemetery. So I don't really see where we're excluding religious cemeteries. I mean, if we know that there's an active religious group that's involved, then by definition, it's not an abandoned cemetery.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Seeing no further questions, we have one more virtual favorable with amendment. Josh Silver.
Hi, thank you again for the opportunity to testify. My name is Josh Silver. I'm a member of the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition. A few minutes ago, I discussed the history of Moses African Cemetery, where there is desecration and beneath parking lots there's several hundred bodies, at least 200 as affirmed by the Maryland court system. This must never, ever happen again. Hubert Humphrey stated that a society should be judged on how we treat children and the elderly. We are not doing a good job treating the deceased in the state of Maryland. HB 893 has the potential to change our treatment of the deceased. It would allow local government to transfer a cemetery to a descendant community. It would allow a descendant community to go to court. However, it must be amended to require the court to render a decision. Unfortunately, the Senate Finance Committee's amended version of this bill would continue exposing historic cemeteries to desecration. The amended version does not provide an option for descendant communities to go to court. It assumes that local government entities acquiring abandoned cemeteries will be well-intentioned. While I hope that is the case, I am not convinced it will be in all circumstances. For example, BACC is involved in a lawsuit against a quasi-government agency, the Housing Opportunities Commission of Montgomery County, that is not doing the right thing. It proposes selling land containing the Moses Cemetery to a developer. It has resorted to court without even trying to engage in good faith negotiations. That is not the way a local government entity should behave. Recently, a nonprofit organization restored the St. Vincent Cemetery in Baltimore that has been neglected for decades. Surely, lawmakers would want to facilitate more of this by passing H93 with the amendment BACC proposes. Give communities a chance to preserve the cemeteries and respect the right of their loved ones to rest in peace. Thank you so much for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Silver. Seeing that there are no questions, thank you very much. Thank you, Delegate Hill, Ms. Simmons, and Ms. McGuckian for your testimony. There are no further questions. There are no further witnesses. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 893. Colleagues, will now move on to our last bill of the day, House Bill 1025, Delegate Rose. And thank you for joining us, Delegates Kaufman, Taveras, Ross, and Riley. I see this bill is back, Delegate Rose.
The eyelashes are back, fluttering away. Good afternoon. You ready for me? Good afternoon. Delegate April Rose here to present House Bill 1025. This is the eyelash extension bill, the licensing bill that we passed actually last year. And in processing that through putting it into law, there were some issues with the language in the bill. And so it was basically making it a little confusing about the option of the test, the board examination test. So I have one of our favorite people here today, Andrew Fulginiti, to answer any technical questions, but it's basically a cleanup bill. Thank you for this opportunity.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. For the record, Andrew Fulginiti with the Maryland Department of Labor. As the delegate noted, this is simply a straightforward cleanup bill. What happened is last year when the body established a limited license for the eyelash technicians, there was an or where there should have been an and. All of our limited license categories under our State Board of Cosmetology, there are several of them from blow drying to hair services, esthetician services. They all require training, education, and a board-administered examination. So the way the statute read last year, it was an or, so in theory, folks could attempt to take a written practical exam without completing the training and educational components of that. So this bill would correct that, simply striking the or language and ensuring that all of our limited license categories have the same sort of qualifications and standards, and that there's no confusion in the industry because this is a process that folks are used to. So with that, the department is favorable on this bill. Thank you.
I do not see any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will move on to our virtual, Nicole Fletcher.
Nicole is actually the executive director of the board. She was here for questions in case there were any specific.
Great.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions, so thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Delegate Rose. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 1025. That concludes the bill hearings for today. I'm sorry. Oh, no questions.
Just a point of personal. I'm looking out in the audience and I see my dear friend who happens to be a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Miss Marlisa Smith, the former director or chief of staff for the National Security Agency.
Oh, welcome. Thank you. Colleagues, we can call Delegate Rogers Delegate Point of Personal Privilege from here on. Okay, with that said, we have no further bill hearings. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Since she's okay with going, she should go ahead and stop the appeal and then go to the post office.